neutral density filters, or ND filters. Do you really need it for your new drone? Our ND filters just act as sunglasses for the drone, so when it's bright, it will help decrease the brightness of your drone footages. But is it really just for decreasing the brightness and nothing else? Let's find out exactly why we need an ND filter by simply trying each one and observing the result. No fancy terms, and just purely testing it. I have here 4 ND filters: 8, 16, 32, and ND64. Obviously, 64 is the darkest. Let's now take some photos with the different ND filters. But first, take a photo without any filters. Pay attention to the shutter speed, which is now 1/1250. And also on the cars. This time, take photos using ND filters. Here's one taken with ND8. Now 16. And 32. And finally, 64. Notice the shutter speed when there is no ND filter. It was at 1/1250th of a second. Shutter speed is the length of time the camera shutter opens to take in light, so 1/1250th of a second is really fast. This is to prevent the image from being overexposed. So, the brighter the daylight, the higher, or faster you set the shutter speed. When we use ND64, as we already know, the image will become dark. As a result, we slow down the shutter speed to make it brighter. So why is 64 showing blurred objects, like the cars in this photo, compared to that with no filter? That is because slow shutter speed will keep the shutter of the camera open longer. This not only allows more light to be recorded, but it also means that any moving objects will appear blurred. Slow shutter speeds are commonly used to capture what is called motion blur. For our test photos, cars were the moving objects, so it becomes blurred, and it is most obvious with ND64. So again, 1 second shutter speed means the camera will capture an image for 1 second. Any moving object from the point the shutter speed opens till it closes will be blurred. So, does ND filters improve image quality? It does in a way. Then when do we need to blur moving objects? Well, that depends on what you want to achieve. One good reason is when you are shooting hyperlapse. Night hyperlapse looks good because it is already dark, so decreasing the shutter speed is always possible. So the image it produces captures the trail of headlights and taillights. But what about during the day? This is where ND filters plays its part. Instead of having this hyperlapse without ND, or this with 8, or this with 16, 32, you get this with 64. If I want more blur but you only have 64, slowing down shutter speed further will wash out the image, it becomes overexposed. Here's an edited result of the same hyperlapse with decreased brightness. So, using 64 with much slower shutter speed, the image becomes too bright. Do you now think you need ND 128, 256, or even ND 1000 to achieve longer blurred moving cars on a bright day? I think my 64 is not good enough. So now, what other photos I can capture with the need of motion blur? Well, you can also do a photo with steady cars or boats, but blurred background like this. To achieve this, your drone and the moving object must be on the same speed. So when you take the photo, the background is the one moving and have it blurred up. If you can't match the speed, then your photo will end up like this, a useless image. So, if the photo you are taking doesn't need anything to blur, then you do not need ND filters. If it is too bright, just increase the shutter speed. It's just the same, don't you agree? What about videos? If you are flying high above, looks like you do not need anything to look blur. In fact, it doesn't really look good if your videos are not sharp from high above. But if you are flying low and in high speed, nearby objects like in this case, the ground, looks good when it's blurred to give more feeling to the flying motion. With high shutter speed, the video is less smooth and looks jerky and choppy. Personally, I only want this type of videos when flying FPV like the DJI Avata. Hope you learned something. What other images or videos do you now have in mind that you want to capture that requires motion blur? Do share and let me know in the comments. If you like this video, tap like and subscribe. By the way, do you think this is taken with hyperlapse? Fly safe everyone and see you on the next.